Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is care. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we use this verb. The first way you're likely to hear care used is to mean to feel concern or interest. A second way you might hear care used is to mean to like or be willing to do or have something. Sometimes you'll hear this particular usage in questions. Would you care for a cup of coffee? Right? So they're asking, would you like? Just another way to say that. A third way you might hear the verb care used is to mean to look after and provide for the needs, again, of someone or something. You should know that care is a regular verb. Because our base verb ends in E, to make the progressive form, we need to drop that E and add ing to form caring. The past tense and participle forms of this verb, again, are regular. So we're adding ed here on the verb. Our base verb, care, ends in a voiced R sound. So our past tense ending is going to make a D sound, and we're not adding an extra syllable. It should sound like this: cared, cared. Okay. Now, I think it's most common for you to actually hear this verb care used in conjunction with prepositions, so as a phrasal verb. Let's take a look now at some common ones you might hear. The first is to care about. Okay. This phrasal verb is used to mean that someone has a strong feeling of love or affection. Again, either for a person or group of people or something. An example of this might be: most mothers care more about their children than anyone else, right? So that feeling of love is strongest regarding children. A second way we can use care about is to mean, again, to be interested in or maybe even concerned about someone or something. An example of this: do you care about climate change? Are you interested or are you concerned? Both of those could work here with that question. A second phrasal verb you're likely to hear is care for. It can have three different meanings or ways we use it. One is to mean to act as a caretaker for someone or something. An example of this: she has been caring for her husband since his diagnosis. So, this sentence is pretty vague, so we don't know exactly what is wrong with this woman's husband, but she is now acting as his caretaker. This might be kind of like being a nurse or uh, medical assistant to provide care for this ill individual. A second way you might hear care for used is to mean to like someone or something. An example of this might be: she doesn't care for olives. So here, this is negative, of course, so this means that this person does not like this particular food. The last way you could use care for is, again, to mean to love someone, right? So you might hear this in movies, TV shows, different things. Maybe one character says to another, I care for you too, right? Another way to say, I love you too. Let's continue using our verb of the day, care, now in a couple different sentences, or verb tenses, pardon. We're going to practice the past progressive or the past continuous today and the simple future using will. Let's start with our past progressive. We need two parts to make this verb tense. We're going to use a past form of be, so that's was or were, and then we're going to use the ing form of the verb. An affirmative example might be: he was caring for his mother as she recovered from a fall last summer, right? So again, this might be that usage of being the caretaker. If you want to make a negative past progressive sentence, you're going to insert not between the past form of be and the ing form of the verb. An example of this: they weren't caring for their grandchildren during fall break. So Again, this might be like caretaker, here watching children maybe while their parents were away. Finally, if you want to make a yes or no question in the past progressive, you're going to start with our past form of be, so was or were, whichever form matches our subject. Subject comes next. And then we've got that ing form of the verb. Here's another example. Was he caring for patients at the hospital when the storm struck? So it's pretty common when we see the past progressive, right? We're noting an action that in the past that was continuing, and we might have another action interrupt it. That interrupting action is always going to be in the simple past tense. So in this yes or no question, that struck, that's an example of a past tense form. So when the storm started, maybe would be another way to say that. Now let's take a look at the simple future using will. The nice thing about this structure is that it doesn't matter what our subject is. We're going to follow the same pattern. So we're going to use will, and then we're going to use the base verb. And it's really common for us to use this structure as we make predictions, offers, all of those things kind of come up with this simple future. So an example of this might be employers will care less about gaps in applicants' work histories after this pandemic. So this is a bit of a promise, if you will, that many people who advise others about finding work and finding jobs have been making, right? Many people understand that the last 20 months or so have been really difficult. And in the past, if you had a gap in employment, whether it was a month, 2, 3, or something longer, some people might kind of wonder, are you really a good worker? Why weren't you working during that time? Between March 2020 and now, people aren't asking that question. Many employers understand. There have been all sorts of things that have made it difficult for others to work. Now, if you want to make a negative simple future sentence, we're going to use will still, but then we're going to insert not. You might hear these two words combined into the contraction won't, and then we use the base verb. You can see that an example of the contraction in my negative example here, she won't care if we only serve dessert. So again, this might be an idea of a promise. I promise she's not going to be upset. Finally, if we want to ask a yes or no question in the simple future, we're going to start with will, then we'll have our subject, and then the base verb. You can see that in this question. Will the kids care if we open presents later on Christmas? The answer is probably yes. Most children want to open those presents as soon as they are awake. Now, let's take a little time to look at some words and phrases that are related to our verb of the day, care. The first word we're going to look at is just the noun form of this word. So just like our verb, the noun can have a couple different meanings. One might be providing what is necessary for someone's health, their welfare, their protection. Okay, that whole group of concerns is one way to use care as a noun. So an example, let's talk about the care we are providing for residents, right? Somebody who runs a nursing home might say a sentence like this, right? Let's talk about how we are providing for the health, the welfare, and the maintenance of our residents. A second way you might hear the noun care used is to refer to serious attention or maybe some consideration that is applied when we are doing some other action and wanting to do that action correctly or to avoid maybe something negative, some damage or some particular risk. An example of this, we're going to move this object with great care. Okay, so we're going to pay lots of attention so that we don't break this item. That would be the damage or the risk. Another word you're probably used to hearing is the adjective careful. This can have a couple different meanings. One is making sure to avoid some potential danger or mishap or some type of harm, maybe like an injury. So, an example of this: be careful, the sidewalk is icy, right? So, avoid slipping and falling. That's what that sentence is suggesting. A second way to use the adjective careful is to mean we're describing something that has been done with great thought or great attention. An example of this: she is a very careful planner. So she gives a lot of thought and attention to making a very detailed plan. We're going to look at two phrases that you may have heard people say that use this word care. One phrase has sort of two forms. You might hear someone say without a care in the world, or they might describe a person as not having a care in the world. Both of these mean essentially that someone is not worrying about anything. So, an example of this: their son goes through his day without a care in the world. Okay? So, this is not someone who is worried or anxious. They might be very relaxed, or you might say laid back. Sometimes that can be really good, that can be healthy, but it could also be frustrating if you're the type of careful planner who wants to organize things and they just, whatever. Okay. The second phrase you might hear is someone say they couldn't care less. So this phrase is usually used to express that someone is indifferent. It's another way to say they don't care, right? They have no interest, they have no opinion about some particular issue or event. An example: I couldn't care less about what movie we watched tonight, right? So this, if someone said this to you, you pick. They don't have an opinion. They don't have a strong interest in. It sounds like in any sort of style of movie, a comedy, an action movie, a drama. Who knows? They are completely indifferent. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.